All right, welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. A couple things to begin with here. Throughout the presentation today, if you do have a question, please use the Q&A area in the Zoom webinar toolbar at the bottom of your screen. We'll probably take a few pauses and answer questions as we go through the webinar if it's pertinent to that particular session or section. Otherwise, we will follow up with you after the webinar if you have a specific question. Today's webinar, we have John, the layout, showing us some of the benefits of maybe thinking about switching to an ERP system in the cloud. And we're going to look specifically a little bit at Acumatica and Dynamics 365 Business Central and explore the pros and cons and some of the great features of both so that you can make a decision that's best for your business. John, on that note, welcome and thank you for spending the next hour with us, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully today you'll gain some more, even if you learn one more thing about what it means to move to the cloud, what options you might have. I mean, really, that is my objective for today, to try and, obviously being in the GP space for as long as we have, Cal and yourselves, that there's our whole mindset needs to change essentially in some cases as to what it would truly move to the cloud. Now, that being said, you don't always need to truly move to a cloud solution to alleviate some of the on-premise burdens. It really becomes a question of what is right, and everybody's different. So with that, I'm going to jump into a PowerPoint presentation, walk through this, and kind of talk through it, and I'll pause, like she said, for different questions as they come about. Cal, some years ago, we're definitely deciding on what cloud ERP solutions we wanted to offer as true cloud, meaning that, Business Central and Acumatica, and we'll get into the definition of that in a little bit. But what does it mean for moving to the cloud? Obviously, there's benefits, but there's also a lot of considerations when you're trying to move to the cloud. And what does that mean to you when you're so used to having access to everything that you have today? Again, there's pros and cons. You really have to decide what is right for each company. That being said, we selected Acumatica, 7+ years ago. Business Central, we've been, monitoring Microsoft's progress as they built out the product. And, last year we were like, yes, it's finally at a point where, they've brought in all the modules that really are needed. And now they're really focused on enhancing the product. So that's, again, a positive for us, and knowing that Microsoft's moving in the right direction. But still, moving to the cloud doesn't mean that you need to abandon GP to do so, right? So, what does it mean? What are your options for a cloud migration? What do you need to know about moving into the cloud, and all the things to consider? And really, what are your ERP options? And then we'll finish up with the questions and answers. Again, we have a small group today, so if we have pauses in between and we have questions come in, we always take those questions at that time. So when you're on with Dynamics GP, you have the option to move to a cloud, a hosted cloud. What does that mean? You can move to your GP environment up to Microsoft Azure. Basically, you're renting the server space. Your internal IT team is still the one that's going to fix printers, add new users, etc., unless you go to a more managed approach where you have a hosting provider that's hosting you in Azure. Definitely an option for many, and we have quite a few clients that have selected that option to basically take their infrastructure, move it up into Azure, tie it to the Microsoft stack, and then people are accessing GP similarly to the way they do today, but they're doing it. It's not on your on-premise, right? But you still have basically all the same access that you would as if it was on-premise. It's just in a different environment. So you're not responsible for maintaining the servers, and obviously there is security, and with the different hacks that have been going on on-premise clients, where they've been held for ransom. There's definitely positives when you're moving to a large hosting provider that really is that's their job, right? They are professionals in making sure that they keep their infrastructure and your data and your infrastructure secure. So that's a big component of why some people are moving to the cloud, and definitely that's something that has definitely been a factor with GP, right? You could also move GP to a hosting provider, right? So there are full service hosting providers. They can provide 24/7 support. Again, this is all really around the the servers and user access and things of that nature. An average Dynamics GP user then is someone that is in IT who knows the basic technical of the system, but they don't need to be a true IT professional the way that you would if you're trying to manage your Azure cloud. That being said, we have a number of clients that have moved to our private cloud that we partner with in order to, again, take that burden off of them for servers, server infrastructure, everything else. And, most people really, it's like, okay, well, if I'm at a crossroads with GP for being able to upgrade, and I need to upgrade servers, that might be the opportune time to be looking at that because, you basically are accomplishing two things at once. So there's definitely some options there that, again, it's really just making yourself more secure. You're definitely now in a cloud environment versus on-premise. It's still not a browser-based solution. Microsoft has its web client. However, it hasn't been widely adopted, and it's still not a true cloud browser-based solution like Acumatic and Business Central are. Obviously, the business benefits of moving to the cloud allow you to focus on growing your business. You're not, having resources tied up with, troubleshooting issues with your environment. Does your, you have some type of, threats going on, and therefore, everybody's focus is now is preventing those threats, and now you're not focused on your business. Did you lose any, business because of it, where you had downtime? Again, you're trying to minimize all those risks, and so thereby, moving into a GP cloud environment, you definitely are going to have that benefit. You're going to eliminate the cost of new servers and related hardware because it's going to be part of that subscription of moving to the cloud. Again, loss of productivity due to server downtimes and issues, again, where your IT staff might have to reach out to some external, in some cases, to help get support to resolve issues. In many cases, it can lower your IT costs depending on what your needs are. You're still going to need another outside professional that's going to potentially, help manage your emailing solutions and, all your other related, technology. But certainly, when it's focusing around GP, that would move that off into that data center that's going to be more secure. And again, you're giving your users access. So at this point, they could access anywhere, anytime, meaning that, really depending on the way that you want to deploy that hosted environment, there no longer need to be in on-premise to be able to access that. And certainly we have clients that are doing that today in many different ways, even with their on-premise solution. It just becomes a question of which one's the right one for you. So what are your options for a true cloud? So some of the true cloud, like I said, Acumatic and Business Central are both considered now true cloud. I will caveat, if you're obviously our GP clients, when you're talking about Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, first off, when you're hearing Dynamics 365, that is a suite of 15 plus products that all are part of the Dynamics 365 suite. Microsoft's goal is to make those products be able to interact or integrate in an efficient manner, right? Business Central is one of those products. So you have to be very specific, because when you get onto Microsoft's website and you start searching functionality and whatnot, you'll probably end up, if it doesn't say Business Central, you're probably on one of the other products that is, again, it's a Microsoft Dynamics 365 product. It's not specifically Business Central. So just keep that in mind. Business Central, even though there is some rumors out there that it's a upgrade from GP to Business Central, it is not. It is Business Central is a completely different system, different structure, different database structure. So it is a migration in either place. So when you're talking about moving to a true cloud solution from GP, there's no simple let's take an upgrade approach, to keep that in mind. Obviously, there are other cloud solutions out there in the cloud space. It's evolving all the time. There's certainly players out there like NetSuite that we'll cover a little bit in here, because obviously they're one of the big players. It's very aggressive out there. They do a lot of promising and trying to get people to believe. You just have to be very careful on when you're evaluating different cloud solutions, that you really are looking at it holistically and what it would mean to your company, and because it's a huge commitment. Obviously, moving to a true cloud ERP, right? It's software as a service. So you're basically getting all the hardware and the software all together. There's no separation, as long as you're not going with a private cloud where you're basically taking over the hardware again, which is an option with both of these solutions, Acumatica and Business Central. It's just not the standard solution that's normally offered. So there are some use cases for that, but it's really not very common to do so. Again, access anytime, anywhere, as long as you have an internet connection, right? So that's important. Some of our GP clients in the past, they were concerned, right? They're in a remote location. They don't have redundant systems for internet connectivity. Power goes out. Okay, now we're out of business, right? Even if we have backup generators, depending on what the situation is, we've got to make sure that all of that is redundant and backups and such to keep my internet connection. Whereas if you're running GP in-house, even if the internet goes down, it's not going to hurt you. It might cause some issues with other connected solutions, but again, it's not a deal breaker. These are browser-based solutions, so they support multiple platforms. So, obviously, we've had clients over the years that wanted to run GP on a Mac. It's always been a bit of an issue. Well, with true cloud solutions, it's not an issue. They support multiple browsers. So obviously, Google, Chrome, Edge, Microsoft's Edge, Safari is supported. So again, you have those flexibility and whichever platform you're on whichever browser you're using to be able to run the application in that. Both of them include mobile apps. So there's a mobile app component which accesses the same data. It's all included with the subscription. So you've got Android and iOS support in both of those. Connectivity to other cloud-based solutions, right? So important when you're in the cloud that that gives you the flexibility of being able to now integrate to other cloud, or it could be built into the solution where you're just setting up a connector. So, similar to what GP does with Avalara, right? For a lot of people that are using Avalara today, right? You enter your information in GP, you do some configuration, and it's communicating with Avalara's cloud solution, right? Well, the same thing is true of Business Central and Acumatica, but there are a lot more solutions like that are available, right? To be able to do that, just configuration versus a true custom integration. And sometimes it's what we need to do for GP. Security, uptime, disaster recovery, all those again are built into this SaaS environment. So you're less concerned. Obviously, you still have to be concerned when it comes to email access. Email threats are probably one of the most common ways that systems get hacked, and so there's still, you need to be working with a partner on that side of the front to keep yourself secure. So seamless updates, upgrades, and enhancements. Definitely cloud solutions, that's what they're looking to do. We'll talk about how that works and the importance of it, because it sounds great. You just need to be aware of how it works. Make sure you're certainly able to manage that process. Responsive design, right? So that means that as we're looking at these different screens, when we switch them around a little bit, that they are automatically resizing, right? So to the screen. So depending on what platform I'm on, they're automatically adjusting. And that's what that responsive design does for you with Acumatica and Business Central. So, if I'm using a tablet, I'm using a Surface, whatever kind of device, right? I'm using a giant screen, then, again, it just automatically scales. Again, that's a limitation with GP and its older design, right? That the windows don't stretch and grow. And so, you're trying to make things visible on these big screens. Scalability, right? So a company can quickly scale up or down depending on your business needs, right? So when you're in the cloud, you're renting that space. So, with COVID, some cloud companies, experienced massive growth. Well, with these, whether you're in Azure or whether you're in AWS, Amazon Web Services solution, right? All you do is acquire more resources, and you're able to scale up. Whereas if you have on-premise servers, it's going to be a much larger task, right? Do I need to buy new servers? Do I need to upgrade my servers? What do I need to do? So that gives you that flexibility again to be able to run your business without having to really concern, okay, if I grow, can the system continue to handle it? So again, minimal IT support and infrastructure. Any questions come into so far?
No, not
Okay.
yet, John. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so another consideration obviously is SaaS pricing. When you're used to GP, it's concurrent users. So, right, you could have 50 users of the system, but only have 30 licensed users. And those 30, whoever logs in first gets access to the system. And, when you've got multiple shifts, users that don't frequent the system, don't use it that often, right? You can basically share that license, right? You have people sharing licenses, so you don't have to buy as many named licenses with GP as you would with other solutions that are out there. So the way it gets licensed, obviously, in Microsoft's case, today you could potentially buy the base product, which includes all the modules except for manufacturing and field service. And you buy a single user for that, and you have access to everything. And then if you want two people log in, you buy another user, right? So it's tied directly to that. Business Central has some of the similarities to GP when it comes to pricing, meaning that when you're looking at the Essentials edition of Business Central, it's $70 per user per month. So the difference being is it is named users. So again, if we go to this equation up here, if I have 50 users, that's 50 users for BC. There's no more sharing of licenses, right? So at $70, you get everything except for, again, similar to GP, you don't get manufacturing, you don't get service management. That would step you up to the premium edition. So important differences here in pricing. The GP legacy model of, you buy the perpetual license first, and then you're just paying your enhancement annually. Where in the case of the cloud solutions, you're paying on an annual basis. They equate it to monthly, but normally it's an annual contract that you're paying. And as you need to add users, you would then acquire a new license for that user. Obviously, if you got to deactivate and activate users as people come and go. Business Central also has something called a Teams user. So that's they're able to do approvals. They can run all the reports, employee self-service. They can put in PO requisitions. They can look at master records. Currently today, they can update some master records. So, it really is depending on what the user needs, it's a way that potentially that could fit into a certain organization. So different price models. Again, BC is strictly primarily based on users, named users. And that is common with different cloud solutions out there. Now, other options and different pricing. So Acumatica takes a completely different approach for the most part. So what it means is that you get in there, so they have a small business edition, which goes up to 10 named users. And then once you are outside of that edition, they're looking at your commercial transaction volume. So what does that mean? Well, they're looking for your highest commercial transaction volume. So the way to think about it is it's like electricity, right? If I have a house that's got 10 people in it, but I'm barely using any electricity, I shouldn't have to pay just because I've got 10 people in it, right? It's really how much consumption am I using? How much resources do I need to drive my system? That's Acumatica's approach. And they tie it to what they call commercial transactions. So a commercial transaction is typically a sales invoice, a AP invoice. Those are typically, as a general rule, the highest. So if me as an organization, my monthly average for sales invoices is higher than my payables invoice, they only grab the highest metric, right? So they don't look at all of them, add them up, which is definitely some solutions do that. So you got to be careful that how do they price their solution, because not everybody is completely transparent on that. NetSuite is notorious for get you in, get you signed for 3 years. And then when you go live and your actual transaction counts and your volumes hit, you then jump 3 tiers or 2 tiers or whatever the metric is. And all of a sudden you're hit with this big bill. So you got to be very cognizant of, what are your transaction volumes in addition to user counts. In the case of like NetSuite, you've got both components there. So just keeping in mind that you really need to know what you're dealing with and making sure that you understand the fine print. In addition, so again, Business Central includes a whole suite of modules, right, for that one user. Acumatica takes a different approach where they include core modules. So basically your financial modules, which for most people, if you're not managing inventory, could very well work with just the core modules, right? But then as you need additional modules, those functionality that you need to add to it, maybe you need inventory control, maybe you need project management, maybe you're a full, manufacturing, field service, distribution company, which we have some of those, and you're going to add all those modules on in addition to the base foundation of the core accounting. So they kind of do it that way, where again, this is what Microsoft used to do back in the day with GP, where you would buy modules, right? And then those modules integrate. With Acumatica, we would just, you acquire the module, we update your license, we go in and we enable it, and then everything just works because it's built to work that way with the integrated products within it. Most ERPs have transaction limits over their base licensing and have additional subscription costs. Now, Business Central, they don't have transaction limits. Acumatica has transaction tiers, right? That volume. So the difference being is that there's also a space consideration that we'll talk about next. In the case of NetSuite, they combine both. So they've got service levels or tiers which they combine with your transactions, your transaction volumes. So you have to be very careful there. Again, there's a lot of different cloud solutions out there. They all have a different pricing model. The more complex the pricing model, the more you have to be careful that you know all your costs before you commit to anything, because the last thing you want to do is get a year into an implementation. In many cases, as I hear from former GP clients that have tried to go to NetSuite, they're a year and a half into an implementation, still not live, and then they finally go live after this large effort, and then they get hit with additional costs and increases because of their transaction volumes that no one in the sales cycle vetted. Other considerations, data storage. So data storage is important, right? You're in the cloud now. You're not only consuming, processor time, processor activity, you're also consuming space on that particular resource. So some solutions allow you, and again, we want that flexibility. So Acumatica and Business Central both allow you flexibility to use lower cost storage options for your file attachments. Obviously you got emails, you got spreadsheets, you got PDFs, you could have product images. All of these are what we consider non-critical. They're not stored in the actual transactional database, right? They're links to those actual different objects, right? So we like Business Central and Acumatica in the fact that we can leverage, and so rather than growing your production database over time, you can take all this additional data that you're capturing and you feel is critical, and so it still works the same way. It's just it's no longer stored in that production database. You're moving it to like an Amazon S3, Azure Blob Storage, or even there are options for local file storage if that makes sense, right? So Acumatica seems seamless, right? You press a button, you say, again, the idea of connectivity with other solutions, right? You go and you fill in your account information for Amazon S3, you click a button, and now anytime a user goes and stores a file, which is just a drag and drop approach, right? Then that file immediately gets saved up to S3. If somebody else goes to look at it right after that, it just opens right back up. It's just accessing it from S3 versus storing it in a production database. Again, storage is a consideration. So Business Central, when you buy a base license with Microsoft, will include 80 gigabytes of storage. Acumatica's lowest tier is 50, and then they jump up to 100. And again, you can buy additional storage, and again, that's a consideration when depending on the type of business that you're in and how much days, disk space, and storage space you'll need. Right. So if I'm a BC client and I've only got 5 users, but I'm a cloud a online seller where I've got lots of transactions, lots of volume, right? My database could be growing. I'm not adding additional. So now I might have to go and add this space to keep that or purge data. So again, when you're in the cloud, it's a little less obvious how you manage your disk space than if you're on premise. With Business Central, you'll get 2 additional gigabytes of essentials users. So if I've got 10 users, I'm going to have 90 gigabytes, and then you get 3 gigabytes for every premium user, so at no extra charge. So again, at that point, then I'd have, so here we'd have 100 gigabytes if we got 10 users. Here we'd have it with manufacturing or the premium edition, we'd have 110. But that's how Microsoft includes that. And then, there are other considerations that need to have when it talks about how they manage the storage, right? So when they're managing storage, you need to know whether or not a sandbox counts against that storage. So in Acumatica's case, it does not, right? So if you want to do an upgrade to the latest version, you would request a sandbox. It doesn't count against your storage. With Microsoft, the sandbox does account against your total overall storage. So if my production database is 60 gigabytes and I'm, only have 100, I can't request a sandbox until either I need to remove some space, right, where I could push files off to some other solution, or I've got to purge data, or I just got to go and buy more disk space, right? So storage space. So keep that in mind. Storage space is definitely a factor. So this is kind of an overview of what NetSuite does, right? So they say their standard service tier can cover 100 users. It includes 100 gigabytes but it only includes 200,000 transaction lines per month. That's over 82 different types of transactions all added up. So 200,000 lines for most of our clients is a very small number. It would not anywhere near 100 users, right? So if I've only got 10 users and I'm that online seller, I'm going to pass 200,000 lines in a minute, in a week, potentially. Again, I'm looking at journal transactions, sales transactions, purchase order lines, sales order, everything, right? Add all those up, right? You add all those up, at the end of the day, that's where all of a sudden you jump up to the premium tier, which is a big, now you go to 2 million monthly transaction lines. It says it can accommodate 1,000 users, but again, this is where they get most of our clients that have looked to go there, or GP clients, and anybody in general that's going to NetSuite. This is where a lot of them get burned, is on the monthly transaction lines, where that then is in the fine print, and they force them to jump up to the next tier. In some cases, that could be $60,000 a year. That's just that jump. So we got to keep in mind that what the fine print is when you're talking about moving to the cloud, because a lot more things you need to factor in all at once, right? Then there's another aspect of this, concurrency limits, right? So beautiful, you're moving to the cloud, right? Now we have connectivity between other online solutions, right? Easy to plug them in, make them work together. Well, how many of them can communicate at the same time to your platform? So there are those are changing numbers with Acumatica as you grow in size and your license with Acumatica, meaning higher transaction volumes. They tie to that. They increase the concurrent web services that can happen at any given time. Otherwise, they stack up, right? And they're waiting for other ones to finish before they can run. Well, if that becomes a significant lag time, the other solution can time out, and now you have problems. Right. Microsoft has been increasing those limits on the Business Central side over the last couple of years as they've improved the platform again. So those are known metrics. You have to kind of look it up where they are today. But again, it's a factor because some solutions don't give you that. And then you have basically a single hose running in, and everything is back up in that one hose versus having concurrency where I've got 5 lines, right? So if I'm, people entering on a cruise ship, right? If I've got one line going in, it's going to take forever. But if I've got 5 lines running concurrently, that's going to move a lot faster, right? So that's kind of the concurrency limits. And it's important that you know that. Again, NetSuite does not normally discuss concurrency at all. So if you're planning on an integrated solution with other platforms, you really need to know, all right, what is the likelihood? Again, those online sellers, that's where it can become a real problem because you've got a lot of activity going on all the time. Some cloud ERPs combine all of the above, right? So you got your user count, you've got your concurrency, you got your data storage, you got your transaction lines. All those things get factored into what your potential subscription costs might be. And so knowing all those variables is really how you're able to then know what you'd be looking at in the future, because going into an implementation, taking on an implementation is a big undertaking. The last thing you want is when you get to finally going live, it's like, okay, you go to renewal time and you're like, we can't afford the solution. They just increased it 50%. That's the last thing you want, right? Now you've got to go through that. Okay, you're going to pay that number or you're going to look to go to another solution. So you got to really do the due diligence up front. So cloud ERP functionality, right? So it's important to know what is included in the solutions, right? So all the solutions have a lot of functionality, but they don't have everything, right? So that being said, I mean, it's no different than GP, right? You need a particular solution for GP. You go and get the solution that really is designed as an expert in that particular area, right? So, if it's EDI or it's, WMS or it's, some kind of paperless solution, where it's got, a lot of approvals and things of that nature, or credit card processing. Again, depending on the solution, determines which one, what is available, what's included, what isn't. GP has a number of a lot of ISVs, right? That was always been the strength when we were selling GP, is how many ISV solutions are out there. There's almost a solution for every industry. So therefore, it was not a you didn't have to talk customizations, right? We add an ISV solution, it's a proven solution. They support it, they enhance it. So just like collections management from Professional Advantage or E1 Smart List Builder. Again, Microsoft sold those for a period of time, but basically they were selling it through those ISVs. Then they finally give them back to the ISVs, and now those ISVs are in the case of Professional Advantage, are improving that product again, right? So continually enhancing that product. Well, same thing is true in Acumatica and Business Central's case. Acumatica has on their marketplace, they have a list of vendors that they have, and then there's gold certified vendors. Acumatica tries to really police the marketplace and make sure that there are no one that's selling there. They have to differentiate themselves and have to do a good job. They're constantly monitoring and making sure that the solutions that they're offering are solid solutions. They don't want anybody that's fly by night selling a solution that's going to look poorly on Acumatica because that solution doesn't work well and now it's integrated with Acumatica. Microsoft's approach with Business Central is a little less policing of who's in the App Store. So App Source is where you'll find all the Business Central apps. Last time I looked, there was well over 600, if not more, apps listed out there. Some of them list as free to try, some list as free. Many times they are part of a suite of products. So, they'll list 10 products, but really there's only 2 there because, there's 5 that are part of a single suite. Again, it's hard to know those. These companies are around the world. And so you really, again, when we're talking about testing these out, you need to really talk to us and say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. You got to make sure these are vetted. Again, the nightmare scenario is, if somebody that was a hacker put an app up on Business Central and it was free, they download it into your production environment. Again, Microsoft's trying to prevent this, but again, with the number of people that are adding to the app source, just throwing it out there, you got to be cautious. Is that you can download that, you don't want to download that in your production environment because what if they're not capturing your account information, your customers' bank information, all those types of things. Again, so in today's world, you just got to be careful. But again, both of them have lots of solutions out there to add to improve upon the core functionality without having to, again, customizations is important because when we start talking about customizations, it gets a little more complex. Because when we get into complex, we mean upgrades and updates. So you think, okay, well, once I move from GP, I don't need to deal with upgrades anymore. No. Matter of fact, you will be upgrading in some cases more often, right? And you may or may not have control. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you got to be aware of how it works. So Acumatica, Business Central, and NetSuite all have 2 major releases per year, right? You need to know what your options for testing are. How much time do you have to test? So it's different based on the different platforms and how much time you have from the time they release that. Microsoft calls Business Central's waves because they release them in waves across the country. So that way they don't upgrade everybody all at the same time. They do it in waves. And those waves have lots of features and functionality. And it's important because if, let's say you were on Business Central 2023 R2, and now you get upgraded to 24 R1 and you were using their jobs module. They renamed everything from jobs to projects and changed some of the functionality in there. So you really need to be on top of, what's changing. And so the way to do that is, again, you want to be able to schedule, when Microsoft would come out with a planned release for that wave, when it becomes available, you can schedule to get that available to you. And in Acumatica's case, it is similar, but you would work through a partner like us, where we would be. So if you're in the always current program with Acumatica, they're going to be applying updates monthly. And so they will not put you on the latest version. So Acumatica released 24R1 in April. And to date, they have not updated any of our always current customers to 24R1. That's slated for August. Again, that gives the customers plenty of time if they want to schedule a test, a sandbox, to be able to testing functionality and looking at new features, right? They can do that. It'll give them a free 90-day sandbox, for that particular client. So again, always current program. There'll be automatic updates via cloud, major, minors, but you're notified 120 days prior. So you really can manage that process. Again, those sandbox do not count against your storage space. So keeping in mind storage space. The always current has an option to only one upgrade instead of 2. So if you only want to do 1 major release per year instead of 2, that is available. And then for larger Acumatica clients, there is the Flex program. The Flex program, basically, it's included with some licensing depending on the size of the license. Again, it's usually the size of the company, the number of transactions that they're doing on a monthly basis. Where this comes into play is we have full control now. So you're basically, as long as you have upgraded once within 18 months, you are covered and you're still under Acumatica support, right? So when it comes to support for issues, we no longer have access to the database, right? So GP, we have a stuck bash, common thing, right? We can go in a SQL, we can clear that bash. We don't have stuck bashes in Acumatica, but if you did run into a particular type of issue, we would submit that to Acumatica, and Acumatica support would take care of it in their cloud to resolve whatever issue that was. But in the case of Flex program, again, we've got up to 18 months, so we're only looking to upgrade every 18 months, and you get that free 90-day sandbox in either scenario. So that way you can test out that functionality. Typically today, if a customer has a lot of customizations, then they are typically not going to, we're truly customizing the logic of Acumatica. Then they're typically not going to be on the always current. They're going to be on the Flex program, which is going to give ability to them to test effectively on any customizations, whether we've developed them, whether they've developed them. Again, having that ability to have that control of that complete upgrade cycle is important. Again, upgrades don't go away, they just become different. Again, if you have a lot of ISV solutions, again, you're more inclined to be on the Flex program. There are ISVs in Acumatica's marketplace that are certified as always current, which means that when the new release of Acumatica comes out, they're certifying that their code is available for that new release. It is a little confusing, so if you have questions, please chime in. ERP upgrades with Business Central. Again, major updates are twice per year, 2 waves. The release notes are available 90 days before the wave comes out, 30 days before that release, you can create a sandbox as a test review. That is not your data. That's just a, a test review. Once the upgrade window is announced, you can push it out up to 60 days before they'll automatically upgrade you. So you got a total of 60 days from the time they release it, and you have to go on and manage that, right? So when they say it's available, you have basically 7 days to request when you want to have that upgrade happen. And then within that time cycle, you have to be able to then hopefully request a sandbox if you need it, which will be then your data. They'll try that upgrade. Again, all the upgrade costs are included with either solution. So you're not paying any services, really. It's more time and consideration on, okay, what needs to be tested, what new features, what's changed. And again, both of these solutions, their cloud solutions are not like GP, where we're kind of used to very small features. Both of these are, like I said, they're both good amount of new features every release, major release. So you do got to be cognizant of the fact that testing and upgrading to get all the benefit of what you're paying for is to be able to manage that upgrade cycle. NetSuite is similar, twice per year. They'll notify when you're assigned an update. You can request a new update in time. Again, you can request a preview, ready for a few weeks, but at the end of the day, NetSuite is going to just upgrade you. So when you're talking about customizations, you gotta be very careful, because it's on you if you're customizing, right? So it's just a different environment altogether than what you're used to with GP. Again, recap: new features are great. You just need to know the risks and plan for it accordingly. How to choose, right? How to choose what should I do, right? Should I take GP to the cloud? Should I migrate to a new solution altogether? So it really comes down to, first thing you got to look at is functionality for your business needs. Case in point, we have a number of clients that are running GP payroll today, right? Well, if you need to run in-house payroll, does that solution offer it? Acumatica does offer Acumatica Payroll. Business Central does not offer it, but there are a number of ISVs. Again, Microsoft is getting out of the payroll space. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. Their bigger product, finance, which is the old Exapta product, they discontinued payroll for that. And we expect that, even though we have support listed with GP through 2028 and beyond, the real factor is obviously, are we going to continue to get payroll updates? So again, that being said, you need to know, does that product support what you need, right? What is important to your business, and does the product support it? These are all different platforms. You cannot assume that there are things that you can do in GP that you can do on other platforms. Perfect case in point would be, GP allows a different ship to location on every sales order line, different, all that information can be different by line item. Not a lot of other solutions out there support that type of functionality. So again, you really need to know what's the nuance, and you really have to do true due diligence if you're considering going to a new platform to make sure it's the right one for you. Again, there are ISVs out there, that may fill in the gaps of what that new solution might offer. What is the cost, and are they certified, right? You need to know and have referenceable clients or users that support that, and that you're getting everything you expect, and that there's not going to be some shortcomings. I had talked to a Business Central prospect last week, client that's been working with another partner for a while and trying to get live on Business Central, and 18 months in, the partner says, yeah, we can't do that. Well, this was a critical part of their business. It's a gap. And now they're reaching out because they're like, how can we address this? And unfortunately, it's a customization, because their old system just allowed them to do it, and they didn't think that any other system wouldn't. So you really need to know what are the key things that make your business different. We chose Acumatica and Business Central as our two cloud offerings. They're both true cloud. very different pricing models, very different functionality in some cases. Where some are much better than others. So it really becomes a question of which one is the right one. Getting to the cloud, again, having the tools to extract the data from the existing ERP, in this case GP, right, is important, right? We can get that data out of GP over into the new solution without having to do a lot of lifting on the client side. So it's more of a productive effort to get you, should you decide you want to go to a new solution, right? How do you get there? It's different every solution, or is that other solution going to say, okay, fill out these Excel templates, which is very common. Fill out these Excel templates exactly the way you need it. Send it to us. We'll put it into the system, and then you tell me whether it's right. Again, it's not an ideal scenario. That's not how we would approach it, because it's got to be a collective effort to get it right. Other considerations moving to the cloud: reporting, right? Everybody has, with GP, the ability, you have access to SQL in most cases. You have add-on products, right? So many of our GP clients use Smart List Builder to build out any Smart List they might have. They might be creating SQL views, tying them to Smart List Builder. They can do direct Excel reporting, right? Querying the database. They got SSRS to build either Microsoft's or building their own custom SSRS reports. ISV add-ons, there's too many to count, right? In the reporting space, when it's financial reporting and everything else. And, so you just need to be cognizant of that, right? So how do you get the most out of GP? Well, a lot of people, it's the reporting piece that, gives them what they need, right, to analyze their business, report to the shareholders or whomever to get that information, and one of the things that we're working with is, Cavallo has a new SalesPad reporting SKU, which basically takes the power of SalesPad's quick report and reporting functionality and can bring that to the existing GP base. So it basically gives you all this power. You're not transactions, but you can definitely, instead of having, Smart List Builder, Excel, SSRS, and other solutions, in many cases, you can do one reporting SKU with SalesPad, and definitely have that benefit of all the feature functionality that we can do within the SalesPad platform. So when you're moving to the cloud, what does that mean? Well, first off, can you access your data, right? Well, no, you're in Azure, you're in Amazon Web Services with Acumatica. You don't have access to SQL. And so what options do you have then to build out reporting, your queries, right? So ad hoc query tools, pushing your data from one solution to a data warehouse so that way you can then report on it. There's ISV add-ons for reporting, and of course, customizations. Again, customizations when it comes to cloud is definitely a big factor because you're on such a tight upgrade cycle. If you're on those every 2 major updates every year, and you're constantly, if you're building out your customizations, you're constantly having to be on a testing cycle. So you got to be aware of how that works. So how do we get this type of reporting when we're in the cloud? Well, in Acumatica's case, it's easy to create new fields in the platform, right? It's a newer platform that give you the ability to create new fields. And then it has something called generic inquiries. Generic inquiries basically are Smart List Builder, a combination of Smart List Builder and SQL views, right? So you can basically report on almost any data in the system, building it out into the reporting that you need. It has built-in pivot tables and searching, and so it's basically a lot better version of what Smart List Builder was at the time. You can also take these generic inquiries, you can expose them to OData, so therefore they're completely refreshable. Obviously, in the case of any cloud solution, you're going to have APIs. So if you've got more technical people, they can truly connect to the APIs on the back end and be able to report on that data through custom reporting that way. Again, you're just going to use a standard API, so you're not truly customizing the platforms. You're just pulling the data out to be able to then report on it. When it comes to printed reports, you need to be aware of, right? I know nobody loves GP's report designer. Been around forever, hasn't really evolved. Then Microsoft went to SSRS. Again, the pros and cons. Well, both solutions have a report designer in them. This Acumatica's report designer is a little more full featured in that you can pull in any table from anywhere, join them in, and basically build any report you want. So again, how do I build reporting? You build it within the solution. You can get the data out in the format you want without having to add any ISV products. If you needed ISV products to really, you want to make it easy to, build out, dashboards and financial statements and, really build out a book of reports for somebody, then you might look at an add-on product for Acumatica at that point. Again, you could do it. It just might be easier to do it a different way depending on what your needs are. So again, knowing what your needs are is important. Automations, typically when you're looking to move to the cloud and you're moving away from GP, really you want to be able to automate things, right? You don't want to have to hit post on everything. Again, neither one of these solutions, they're more real time. So, you're not managing batches all the time and having to post batches and worrying about batches failing. It's a different world. And again, automation suites, Acumatica hasn't built in. I'll get to Business Central in a moment, but Acumatica, I equate them to where Great Plains was before Microsoft owned it, right? They did one thing. They were only in the business of making software, right? Acumatica, that is still their business. They're only in the business of making Acumatica better. So they're constantly investing in their solution, trying to future-proof it and make it better all the time. And that's where those features and functionality come in. On the Business Central side, you can add fields to almost any screen just through a personalization as long as the field already exists. You can't create new fields without a customization. I don't recommend that you use customizations if you're going to be creating a lot of fields, like our SalesPad users do. In that case, there's add-ons where from ISV products, they allow you to create those fields for the BC screens, extending the BC screens and data fields. And then you're able to then add those with that customization back to those screens, doing personalization to add those fields to the screen. So again, similar to for people that are using SalesPad to be able to do that screen configuration. Similarly, you can do the same thing in Business Central that way. As far as ad hoc reporting, Business Central does not have generic inquiries. So you'd be looking at adding on a solution like E1's PopDoc, which has a query builder for Business Central's data. And you're basically doing, simple query build outs and building that reporting. So it's going to pull the data out of Business Central and give you the reporting you need. If you need something more full featured than that with Business Central, there's Cosmos. Cosmos is very nice solution that really is very powerful. It's the people that were with Jet Reports when they basically left when Jet Reports got acquired and went and created Cosmos, and now they've created a much better version of a reporting SKU that's for BC. And you can connect to different data sources as well, so other data sources, right? So one of the features of PopDoc is you literally could have a lot of different data sources, and you could view all that data and try and pull that data together in one essential reporting solution. So again, different ways to do things. When it comes to Microsoft's approach for automations and reporting and things like that, we're going to leverage the Microsoft 365 products, right? So Power BI, Power Automate, latest being Copilot, right? To be able to query your data within it and have Copilot go find you what you're looking for, right? That's going to be Microsoft's approach to getting you the information you're looking for. And again, Microsoft is heavily investing and improving on the product. They know that, GP users love SmartList Builder and the functionality they have there. And so Microsoft is working to add functionality around that. It's just not there yet. But again, the point here is ad hoc reporting when you're in the cloud, you have it pretty easy with GP and what you can do. When you're in the cloud, you have to know what your options are. You got to know, a lot of people think, okay, what functionality can I do? What features, what modules? Okay, well, at the end of the day, most of our clients with GP that have been on for years have built all these reports. You really got to identify what reports are important, and does the solution give you the ability to be able to run those reports? So what do you need to know when considering moving to the cloud, right? So what we've talked about so far is modules, costs, where am I going? Am I taking GP to the cloud? Am I migrating to a new solution? because no matter what, it is a migration, right? We try to remove as much of that effort as possible, but at the end of the day, you're having your entire organization have to learn a new platform. For many, obviously you want to take advantage of that, right? So, the fact that you got a mobile app, you've got, dashboards built in the case of Acumatica, you can build any dashboards you want, any graphs, all those things are built into the platform, right? So it's a newer platform, a lot more flexibility than what you have today with GP. But again, it is a big effort. You're essentially now moving to the cloud. Again, when you get around the core application, then you got to focus in on reporting. You got to look at your upgrade cycles and know how you're going to deal with that. And then, of course, you got Business Central, like I said, similar. They're both cloud solutions. You got mobile apps. Again, one Acumatica, you get the core. You get a lot more core functionality and built-in robust functionality around, again, reporting and things of that area. You don't get the modules without having to acquire different modules. Or Business Central, you don't get all that functionality for reporting, but you get all those modules, right? So if you need a lot of modules and your different user counts, again, Acumatica's pricing is essentially, they say unlimited users because it's based on your transaction volume. Business Central names users, so therefore you really need to know what your users, what kind of access do they need, how much. Both of them have role-based security. Both of them have the ability to secure down to even a field level. They both have the ability to have audit trails turned on, so you can basically say, okay, what do I want to track to what level? If you want to know who changed this field when, you can do that in both solutions. So again, a lot of new functionality that today with GP I'd have to add ISV products for. Again, that's built into both these products. It's just a matter of what do you need. So with that, I want to say thank you, and any questions that have come in?
John, there was one. Is there, when we were talking about costs and licensing and all those options, Acumatica, I guess, for the enterprise edition said there was a maintenance fee, but are there other annual maintenance fees now like you had with GP?
No. Again, in both cases, your subscription license, there are no enhancements because you're paying for that subscription license on a annual basis, and that includes everything. So it includes the support. Certainly there are some features like with this Acumatica, if you wanted to get regular SQL backups created, because so one of the things I didn't cover in here that's probably really should have is around access to your data, right? What if I want my data back? Or what if I want my data because I'm creating a test environment to work with because I want to create customizations, or you want us to do it, right? So that's important, which means that Acumatica today offers anybody a free 2-user license, right? If you've got SQL running somewhere all of us have SQL running on our laptops. We basically download a free version of Acumatica, installs in minutes, and now we're able to run Acumatica under a free 2-user license on my local laptop. Where I'm getting at is we have clients today that basically go up to their cloud environment in Acumatica. They create a snapshot of Acumatica. They download the snapshot, a zip file, and they upload it, import it into their local environment. And now they've got a complete version of their entire system, everything, in a local environment that's free to use. Why is that important? We've had clients that have gotten acquired that were running Acumatica, and they don't want to continue to pay the subscription with Acumatica to keep that environment up and running. So basically, they now have a full, related database of all their data that they can still query and access. It's just free 2-user license, right? So you can't go and transact in it. You can't print reports without it saying that it's a test or whatever it says on it, but you have that access. Business Central has some similar capabilities. You can download Business Central and run it on a local. It will install SQL Express and you can run on a local. It limits your ability to do things with Business Central and the ability to interact with the Dynamics 365 stack. But again, there is some feature functionality around that. When it comes to other cloud solutions that are out there, that's an important question, right? What happens if I want to leave, and how do I get my data back, and what does it cost, and what does it look like? Do I get my data back basically in flat file buckets that are not relational in any way? And now I've got to somehow try to do something with that. Again, that is definitely something that's happening out there with different platforms. They don't want to give you, once you're in the cloud, they want to make it as hard for you as possible to get out of their environment, right? So they're going to do everything possible. So again, these are questions you just need to have answers to when you're considering moving to the cloud.
Great, thank you, John. That's it for the questions that came in. I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Well,
If anyone has further questions, feel free to reach out to John or anyone on the CAL team and they can help with that. So thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.